Good morning and welcome to another edition of Money Talk with Melanie. We are broadcasting live from Cape May Courthouse, New Jersey. It's kind of a dreary day today, but we are coming to you via SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio and Television. I am your host, the business diva, Melanie Collette. And we are very happy to have joining us this morning Dan Johnson, who's an author at, and I think he's more than the author though. Actually, we're gonna clarify that when I get him on the line. At the Tax Revolution Institute, and he's going to talk to us about the Tax Revolution Institute, like what it is that the Tax Revolution Institute does, and we're also going to talk Trump tax cuts. In addition, for the 5 minutes of personal finance, we're going to answer the question that many of you have, I'm sure, as I have this question on occasion as well, which is, why am I spending so much money that I don't have? So I'm going to talk to you in the 5 minutes of personal finance about that very thing, about how the reasons why we tend to spend money that we don't have. If you're listening to us on Spreaker, like audio only, feel free to join us on shrmedia.com, where you can listen live as well as chat. So it would be it's immensely fun when you do it that way. Just saying. And when you go into the chat room, many of our listeners are in there. If you have questions for Dave Johnson, for Don. Okay, Melanie, come on. For Dan Johnson, you can put them in the chat, and I will be sure to ask him. So be sure to do that. But before we get to that, a few housekeeping items to go over as usual. The first thing is, I want to thank our sponsor for today's show, taxmama.com, and there's another one in the works I'm going to talk to you about soon. We'll have another sponsor joining the Money Talk with Melanie show. I'm very excited about that. Also, if you did not catch my hosting of Patriot Tonight on Sirius XM, what night was that? What is today? Today is Wednesday. That was Monday night. So if you're a Sirius XM customer and want to catch me hosting 3 hours of Patriot Tonight, you can do so on demand on Sirius XM. So check that out. I was on Patriot Tonight, Sirius XM, Patriot Channel 125. So I had to give that shameless plug for my other appearance that I did. Also, if you have not seen on my social media, which we're going to talk about in a minute, I'm going to be joining several women for the Eden Jordan Women of Influence national tour. It's a national speaking tour. I'll have details, more details about that as we go along, but a lot going on. A lot to be very excited about. I know I don't sound very excited probably right now because I'm really sleepy. Because I'm really tired, but I am really excited about all that is going on. Oh, and the chat room is lively already. I have the Unpleasant Blind Guy is in the chat room, and so is the one and only Mr. Dan Butcher. So he is making sure that all things are taken care of as far as the video streaming live. So Dan said, "Wake up, Mel." I know I sound a little dead. I sound like I've been auditing all night, which is what I was doing. But that's the life of a financial person. Is just never, it's never dull, never over, always having to do something. Anywho, if you'd like to follow me on social media, find out ahead of time who's going to be on the show, you can do so by following me at Money Talk Mel. Or you can like that's on Twitter, or you can like my Facebook page, Money Talk with Melanie. If you want to email me about something, you have a suggestion for the 5 minutes of personal finance, or for a guest you'd like me to try to get on a show, shoot me an email at moneytalkwithmelanie@gmail.com. Finally, if you'd like to be an esteemed guest on the show, such as Mr. Dan Johnson of the Tax Revolution Institute, or Senator Ted Harvey, or Fox News specialist Ebony Williams, give me a call at 937-756-6639. I'd love to talk to you. Now, for the today's Money Talk news report. Well, the healthcare bill, or should I say bills? Yesterday, they voted on, Congress voted on 3 different versions. None of them passed. Count me disgusted. Just saying, like, guys, Republicans, like, get your collective stuff together. Come on. I'm just trying to breathe. I don't understand. I don't understand what went on all the times that they were repealing the health care bill. I don't get it. It's just very upsetting. Thank you, Dave Milner, in the chat. This is very upsetting. And today they're going to vote on a clean repeal. Real nice. I mean, you guys claimed all this time that you had something ready to go. We're going to replace it with something way bigger and way better. Really, a whole lot of talk. And now they're going to vote on a clean repeal today. That's just great. It may not be, it may very well be, from a policy perspective, that doing a clean repeal is not that big a deal. Okay. But from a political perspective, it's absolute suicide. I can just hear all the liberal ads and the Democrat ads running now during special election. Come on. We need to get, and Dave Milner's right. Dave Milner in the chat is absolutely right that some of these Republicans, quote unquote Republicans, need to be primaried. They need to get out. Seriously. I mean, we're headed straight towards single payer, which is exactly what we wanted to avoid. And, you know, and a huge reason why Donald Trump got elected. Okay, putting my soapbox away, but only for a moment, I'm sure. Now, ladies, this is Money Talk News. I swear it is. But if I have any opportunity to talk fashion and shoes on my show, like, why not? Michael Kors is going to buy Jimmy Choo. How about that? And if you don't know who Michael Kors is or who Jimmy Choo is, then we need to have a separate show called, Fashion Talk with Melanie. You need to know these things. This is essential information that you need to know. Oh my goodness, Dave Milner in the chat. Yo, Mitch, get out the way. Dave Milner is channeling his inner Ludacris. But so that's some pretty important news in the fashion world, and quite frankly, in the finance world. I'm just saying. If you recall, Manolo Blahnik was like one of the big brands on Sex and the City, as was Jimmy Choo. It was all about the shoes. I'm just saying. So something to think about as you're doing your investing. At Michael Kors is buying out Jimmy Choo. That's a powerful alliance. Housing prices, according to the records in June, they hit a record high in June. So congrats to all my realtor friends. Hopefully that means you guys are making money. And the fact that there's a high demand is really a good sign of our economics. And this was a report according to Zillow. The newest player in pharmaceuticals, according to, and I actually pulled this story from the Wall Street Journal, is Samsung. And what they're doing is they're teaming up with Merck and to put together an alternative to Remicade, the Johnson & Johnson rheumatoid arthritis drug. So that's an interesting alliance as well. Samsung really looking to diversify the products that they offer. Go figure. Finally, after 30 years and 400% rise in tuition, college tuition is finally, the increases have seemed to have slowed, according to the Labor Department of Statistics, which, as someone who as someone put it to me one time, said, you are either, Melanie, you're either in school or teaching school, which is very true. So someone who's been in school a lot, 400% increase in college tuition over the last 30 years is outrageous. And, you know, as educated as I am, I still have to think to myself, but why? And I'm also an adjunct professor. So don't kill me for saying that, but come on. 400%, it's absolutely outrageous. Anyway, it's starting to slow, and that's good news for parents everywhere, for people who are planning for their students' education. I'm hoping that we can do something about that, about reversing the trend of the increase. Anywho, when we come back on the other side of the break, we're going to talk to Dan Johnson. He is from the Tax Revolution Institute. We're going to talk about Tax Revolution Institute and what it does, and also the 5 minutes of personal finance. Why am I spending money that I don't have? We'll be back on the other side of the break.
Bible says to train a child in the way that he should go, and he shall not depart. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, when I was just a little boy, my dad would tell me, what is taught to one generation dictates the direction society takes in the next. For example, the Saul Alinsky communist teachings drilled into the mind of young Hillary Rodham produced perhaps one of the most morally corrupt candidates for public office ever. That description applies to many of her hippy-dippy generation that plotted the long-term whittling away of the good values that contributed to making the United States the envy of the world. If you, dear listener, ever wondered what in the world happened and how our Congress became populated with over 100 communists and many other compromisers who refused to uphold their most important physical duty, which is to work with the president to protect our republic from enemies both foreign and domestic, the problem is simple. In most cases, they were not taught enough about the importance of adhering to the principles that are blessings when upheld. My fellow Americans, bless our republic by training up your children in the way that they should go. Then perhaps America will again be the envy of the world. I'm Ron Edwards. Blowing away the myths and revealing the truth. You can continue to blow away the myths with Ron Edwards on Facebook, Twitter, and theronedwards.com. Sponsored by Ron Edwards.
Who likes paying taxes? Nobody. That's why Eva Rosenberg from TaxMama.com wants you to pay less of them. Read Small Business Taxes Made Easy and learn how to set up a business plan that minimizes taxes, the tax benefits of different forms of financing, spot and fix errors in the 1099s, legally increase your deductible expenses with better record-keeping techniques. Don't let the IRS squeeze you out of every penny. Start deducting today. Visit TaxMama.com. TaxMama.com. That's TaxMama with one M.com.
We love Tax Mama, aka Eva Rosenberg, here at Money Talk with Melanie. If you have not gone to her website and checked out TaxMama.com, do so. And her books are award-winning. She's got one book called Deduct Everything, and she's got another book called Small Business Taxes Made Easy. Also, when you go to her website, she will answer your tax questions for free. So check that out. She's an expert here on Money Talk with Melanie, and one of our sponsors. Very happy to have her. Also, you heard during the break Ron Edwards' Notebook. Check his show out, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 3 p.m. Pacific Time here on SHR Media on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. He rocks, even though he and I have fundamental different disagreements about President Trump. What can I say? I still love him now. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest, who is Dan Johnson. He's the executive director. I knew I had that wrong. Executive director of the Tax Revolution Institute. Now, prior to joining the Tax Revolution Institute, he was the founder of People Against the NDAA, or PANDA, which grew into one of the largest civil liberties movements in America and served as the president of Solutions Institute, an activist training center. He's written for over a dozen news outlets, including Huffington Post, frequently speaks at major events around the country, and has appeared on numerous radio and TV shows like this one, as the Revolution Institute's executive director. He has presided over the Tax Revolution Institute's First Amendment Alliance to protect nonprofit free speech. I love it. He's spearheaded the launch of the audit of the IRS initiative. Yes. And is currently lighting the brush fires of a tax revolution. And without further ado, Mr. Dan Johnson, how are you this morning?
I am doing great, Melanie. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for being on the show this morning. When I saw you, I saw the Tax Revolution Institute. I quite frankly had never heard of it, but I thought it's something my audience definitely needs to learn about. Is there anything in your bio that I missed that you would like to add, that you want the audience to know?
I think the most surprising thing people find is I'm usually about 30 years younger than everybody else in tax policy. I am 24.
What? Are you really? You do have a baby face. You do.
Last I checked, that's what my driver's license says anyway. I mean, they could have gotten it wrong, but that was last I checked.
Well, you are incredibly accomplished, and now you're considered a millennial, right? That you're still in millennial zone?
That's what they call me.
I don't know who came up with all these like classifications, like found it.
And if I may lodge a protest against that name, everybody else got one letter, Gen Y, Gen X, Gen, all these other gens. Why do they call us millennials? Like everyone else got a cool, almost like an X Games name, and we're stuck with something that sounds like 2001: A Space Odyssey or something.
I think it speaks to the extra care with which we have to treat your generation. I'm kidding. I'm being completely age biased.
Hold on. Let me be a snowflake and hang up after I can't take it anymore.
Oh, listen, and I knew you would totally catch what I was saying, right? I love it. Please don't hang up. I know you're not a snowflake because you're still on the line. So that's good. That's good. That's good news. So tell the audience about the Tax Revolution Institute. Tell our audience about what it does, what it's about. School us here.
Absolutely. So we're going to take a completely different take on taxes for the next 15, 20 minutes or so. And so I hope your audience is ready to go on a little bit of a journey.
I love it.
Let's start with what are taxes? And that might seem like an odd question. Of course, taxes when the government comes and takes your money. But what was the reason that taxes worldwide were invented in the first place? For that, we have to go back to the ancient Sumerians, which is the first time that we know we have some record of a tax. And the reason the ancient Sumerians instituted a tax, i.e. forcibly taking money from their population, was to help them out in a war. The justification was either we all die or you're going to put a little bit of money in the pot. And when you put it that way, it sounds pretty reasonable to force you to put money into a pot because otherwise you're probably going to die. And being ancient times, they figured the only way they were going to get people to do that wasn't through self-interest or some sort of communication, really force them to. And over time, taxes, they stayed as just a warlike feature for a while, and they've always been a primary feature of war. If you go back to the Athenians, you had the Diaspora, you had several other taxes throughout history, but over time, those rulers in power realized that as we tax people for war, we can also tax people for other things. And it just became a convenient system to force people to contribute to whatever the king or ruler of the time wanted. But the justification was and always has been that taxes are to take care of things that the individual cannot be expected to take care of. For example, in today's society, no one really wants to come home from a long day at work and fix a pothole in the road. So they typically rely on their taxes to take care of that. Very few people, unfortunately, even though I was homeschooled, very few people educate their own children. And therefore they pay taxes for that. And again, the idea is that humanity, people will not come together and do it themselves. A very ancient concept. People will not come together and do it themselves, and therefore we must force them to do it. Once you understand that taxes are to cover those things that were designed to cover those things that we otherwise couldn't do ourselves, then you start to understand the problem with the tax system. The problem with the tax system, America has one of the most complicated, most egregious tax systems in the world. You have some tax systems that are worse. So many South American tax systems aren't so much a predictable tax system as you just bribe the tax collector when he comes around every month. But the American tax system costs the American taxpayer with local, state, and federal taxes approximately 50.1, about 49.9, depending on the year, percent of their income. This comes from local, state, federal taxes, and $1 trillion in compliance costs from all those levels combined. And most people, I would think, and maybe you think this way as well, most people, I would think, don't see 50% of their income in returns from the tax system, I would guess.
I think you're correct. I mean, that would be, if we did, I mean, we would probably be living in some type of utopia that I think we would really appreciate.
It's very possible. It's very possible. And so when we started the Tax Revolution Institute, we had known there was a problem with the tax system. We had known that Americans are paying a lot. What are they getting back? That it's very complicated. The compliance costs are very high. The IRS is out of control and has been for the past 100 years. Okay, so these are facts that we knew on the ground. But when I was taught and brought up by my parents on how to solve the problem, you go back to the basics. When a baseball player is continually missing hits, and he used to be hitting home runs and line drives all the time, the coach has him sit down and practice swinging the bat. You always go back to the basics. And so we, myself and my communications director, over several months and culminating with, he flew out here to Atlanta and we sat down in front of a whiteboard for 2 days. We charted out what are the fundamental reasons why we do not get what we pay for out of tax. Now, I'm sure most people haven't actually done this. What are the reasons that we don't get what we pay for out of taxes, and we might get what we pay for in a lot of other areas? Well, we found 7 that we can identify, and they all stem from one in particular, which I'll start with. About most everything in our lives is provided for mutual interest. I came on this radio show because I thought it'd be great to reach an audience, and you had me on this radio show because you want to reach more people, and probably other reasons. We are both mutually interested. We're both winning from this radio show.
Right.
We both win when we buy, when we sell, when we trade. In fact, buying and selling are just forms of trade. I'm trading the money that represents the work I did for someone else to you, and you're trading me a material or something in return. We're both winning.
Yeah.
Even in compassion, even in helping out another person, if you give money to a homeless person on the side of the road, they say giving is twice blessed, right?
Yes.
I am also blessed by giving that person. We are both winning. But public services, the things that we're not supposed to be able to do individually, those public services are provided very differently. They're provided adversarially. So either one person wins, whether it's the taxpayer or the person in need, or in many cases, both people lose. Give you a great example. The Temporary Assistance for Needy Families Program, which is in the United States, straight welfare. The Temporary Assistance for Needy Families Program, approximately, let's say, for every $10 that goes into this welfare program, and, how much can it cost to write a check? There's going to be some administration costs, of course, but you have someone in an air-conditioned room, maybe in a building, writing a check and someone else putting it in the mailbox. How much can that cost? Take a guess as to, out of every $10, how much on average actually ends up in the hands of the welfare recipient, and how much ends up in the hands of bureaucrats?
Oh no. Yeah, okay, let's just say I don't know, 40%.
You are a believer. It is $2.60. That would be 74% ends up in the hands of bureaucrats, only 26% nationwide in the hands of an actual welfare recipient.
If a charity did that, Dan, if a charity did that, somebody would probably get arrested. Like, there would be an investigation. Seriously.
Exactly. Exactly. No, you're right.
You know what I mean? If a charity, held some kind of benefit or something like that, and only 20%, slightly over 20% actually got to the people that it was supposed to benefit, are you listening, Clinton Foundation? Then, somebody would get arrested. Somebody would be going to jail.
See, you've made the connection much quicker than most people. Good job.
Well, I do host a money show.
A lot of people don't quite go there, but that's really important. You see, the government doesn't have to earn your money. Every single year, the government can rely on taxation because it's by force. They don't have to actually earn those dollars. And so what happens at a federal agency when there's a major scandal and 100+ people are involved? Maybe one person gets fired. The rest of them get promotions. What happens at a nonprofit when there's a major scandal? Somebody gets fired. The nonprofit may even go down because you are putting your dollars directly into that organization, and you can choose to send your dollars somewhere else. If
Absolutely.
That organization doesn't go up to task, if it doesn't serve the people that it's supposed to serve. And yet, nonprofits in particular, but also for-profits, they provide a lot of what we rely on the tax system for. One of the things you'll hear all the time is, well, we rely on taxes for roads. Well, private companies build the roads. The government just takes a cut off the top.
Wait, back up. Hang on. What did you just say? Did you say that the government just takes some off of the top? Is that what you just said?
Basically.
Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just thought that was an important point that I didn't want to gloss over. To do what with?
To efficiently administrate your money to those companies.
Wow. I just can't. I can't deal. Anybody who's listening should be infuriated, and you'll understand why. And listen, good for you for starting early. You're like, I want to get the government out of my pockets as soon as possible. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just thought that was incredible what you just said, because the government's not supposed to be a for-profit entity so that it can finance itself. It's supposed to be very accountable for every dime, because it's not their money. It's our money. So,
Did you know that in the financial transparency is a big part of accountability, right?
Indeed.
Financial transparency is something the government talks about all the time. Is we need more financial transparency. Yet, if you've ever tried to FOIA request a government agency, you know how easy that is.
Yeah.
For your listeners' benefit, it's not.
Right. Right.
But in the 1920s, 1910s, maybe even late 1800s, the New York Stock Exchange, in order to get on the big board without the SEC, without government regulation, without a single bit of government involvement, the New York Stock Exchange realized that investors wanted financial transparency and required a company, if they were to get on a big board, to file what financial people know as a 10K or a 10Q, listing all of the assets of the company, listing their financial plans for growth, listing their potential problems. And if they did not comply with that, then they would get kicked off of the board of the exchange. That did not require a single bit of government regulation. There's another thing that didn't require a single bit of government regulation. Nonprofits put out annual reports. Most nonprofits realize that their donors want accountability as to where their money is going. So they put out an annual report and they talk about how many people they've helped. A great example, Habitat for Humanity. Habitat for Humanity puts an annual report pointing out that they help over 1 million people per year now. Their direct competitors, so to speak, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, will not tell you how many people they've helped. Their answer is, well, we spend so much money here, why do you care?
Whoa, wait a minute. What do you mean? I mean, and here's the thing.
I dare your listeners to go on the Federal Housing and Urban Development Department's website and go try to find how many people have taken HUD housing assistance under which program. Good luck. You won't. We spent the better part of 2 days trying to find it. It's not there.
You know, now I'm not surprised to hear that. Only because I've done some research and written a couple of articles about our regulating agencies, and that just goes along with because there's no list of how many regulating agencies we have either. You know, that the government is very bad at keeping track of things, unless of course one of us are doing something wrong. Then they're experts. You know, then they're absolute experts. But outside of that, they're very bad at it. Very, very. They create 8,000 new regulations a year, and it's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I want to say hi to new people in the chat. There's new people in the chat room. But they're just in as viewers. If you want to be identified, I just want to tell you, you can log in under your social media, either Twitter or Facebook, and I'll be able to see who you are. But you know, it could be the NSA. I had an FBI, a former FBI chief, on my show a few weeks ago, and ever since then, I've theorized that when people are in the chat anonymously, it's probably the CIA, the FBI, or the NSA wanting to know what I'm talking about. But I want to welcome the viewers 1 and 2 who are mysteriously in the chat room. And if you have a question, if you have a question for Dan Johnson of the Tax Revolution Institute, now is the time to ask. So let me migrate over a little bit to the Trump tax plan. Now, my understanding is that it's being worked on in secret while they're working on the health care bill, which they've done a really bang up job with so far. So I want to get your initial impressions on what you know about the tax plan. We've been given an overview, but no details yet, as they're still working on the bill. What are your thoughts on that? What's the Tax Revolution's position on the Trump plans?
Sure. So before I get into that position, I want to make something very clear to all of your listeners. The problem with taxes is not that they're not fair enough, they're not flat enough, they are not simple enough, they are not, etc. The problem with taxes is they're adversarial. The problem with taxes is because the taxpayer is not allowed to choose where their money goes and is not allowed to choose how much money to put into our system of public services that we know everybody needs. We know we need a social safety net, we need military protection, police, things like that. Everybody knows we need these things. But because the taxpayer is not allowed to choose how much and not allowed to choose exactly where their money should go into that system, it becomes adversarial. And when it becomes adversarial and pits the taxpayer against the person receiving the public service, even if some of those is them, that's where you get all the waste in government funding that we talk about all the time, like the TANF program. That's where you get the massive concentration of money and power in the hands of just a few people. You know, if you took our existing tax system and you separated the spending of the government based on that, of the federal government across every member of Congress, we would be trusting each member of Congress to correctly and judiciously spend $5.1 billion.
Damn.
I don't know many people who have done that correctly.
I mean, I don't even know how else I'm supposed to respond to that. What? Okay. Okay. That's
so taking that into account, and there's other problems as well. People can go to taxrevolution.us and take a look at if they click on the problem under the revolution, they'll be able to see the problems with taxation as we know it. But I want to answer your question, obviously.
We're up against hey Dan, we're up against a hard break. If you could hold your thought to the other side of the break, that would be absolutely fantastic. I'm sorry to cut you off. You know how that is. We're talking to Dan Johnson from the Tax Revolution. He's the why do I get this wrong? He's the director. And I'm sure, let me go back and look at my notes so I have this right. The executive director, there we go, of the Tax Revolution Institute. And he is giving us some great information on all things taxes and why we're so miserable paying them and also what we can do about it. So very excited to have him on the show. We'll be back on the other side of the break.
From the forefront, the streets of our nation capital, men of faith, Dr. Michael Jones, the underground professor, and Kenneth McClinton, the exceptional conservative, bring both constitutional gravitas and spiritual perspective on today's issues to the most influential Christian urban talk show, 9:05 p.m. Eastern, Thursdays. It's a new day on a new day, black and red.
Hey, it's Jersey Joe, Hook Reaver, Common Sense. You can catch me every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on shrmedia.com. That's every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, shrmedia.com. The best late-night conservative talk show in America, Tackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Tackhead Sean and Tackhead Clint. And we're working on immigration papers for certain other guys that have to work here too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late-night conservative talk, Tackheads Radio. The best late-night conservative talk show in America. And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.
Times are dark. The people are misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation looking for direction needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, Pundit Press, Live Rebooting Liberty, and YouTube for a unique brand of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy, because the truth is not always pleasant.
Who likes paying taxes? Nobody. That's why Eva Rosenberg from TaxMama.com wants you to pay less of them. Read Small Business Taxes Made Easy and learn how to set up a business plan that minimizes taxes, the tax benefits of different forms of financing, spot and fix errors in the 1099s, legally increase your deductible expenses with better record-keeping techniques. Don't let the IRS squeeze you out of every penny. Start deducting today. Visit TaxMama.com. TaxMama.com. That's TaxMama with one M.com.
From the war front to the streets of our nation's capital, men of faith, Dr. Michael Jones, the underground professor, and Kenneth McClinton, the exceptional conservative, bring both constitutional gravitas and spiritual perspective on today's issues to the most influential Christian urban talk show, 9:05 p.m. Eastern, Thursdays. It's a new day on a new day, black and red.
And we are back. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. This is your business diva, Melanie Collette. And we have with us this morning Dan Johnson, who is the executive director of the Tax Revolution Institute. Very excited to have him on the show. Also want to say hi to Jeff Booker, who just joined the chat. How are you this morning, Mr. Booker? And we have 3 more anonymous viewers in the chat. If you log in with your social media, I'll be able to tell who you are. But if you choose to remain anonymous, that is okay as well. If you have a question for Dan Johnson, please go ahead and type it in the chat, and I will be sure to ask him. So, Dan, before we went to break, I asked you for a bit of an overview, if you will, of what you thought of the proposed Trump tax plan from the Tax Revolution's perspective, and you were saying.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was going through some of the fundamental flaws of taxation that come down to the fact, again, that people can't choose where their dollars go and how much money to put into our public service system. And our contention at the Tax Revolution Institute, backed by plenty of data and common sense, and I saw one of your commenters. I finally found the chat room myself.
Oh, great!
I saw one of your commenters in the chat room.
Great, Dan's in the chat. Wonderful.
We've been asking politicians about, they've been claiming they're going to get rid of fraud, rape, and abuse for 25 plus years. It's actually been since we've been electing politicians in the history of the world, they've been claiming that. And quite frankly, they have no power to do that. And the reason they have no power to do that is in the voluntary sector, in our day-to-day interactions with human beings. What actually causes downward pressure on waste? What actually reduces waste? To throw a guess out.
What actually reduces? I don't even know how the government reduce. The first thing they would have to do is do some type of assessment, some type of inventory to reduce waste. They would have to know. They would have to know what they're spending where.
Right. And the reason they don't care is they don't have to compete. That's what causes
competition. Right. There you go.
Is me knowing that if I spend $200 on this steak, that I won't be able to spend that $200 on something I might need in the future. That's what causes downward pressure on waste. The government has no such downward pressure because they know if they spend $200 on steak today, next year they're going to have that same $200 back for their agency, because even though Congress is supposed to, quote unquote, threaten the agencies, with the power of the purse, they don't do that. And when they, even bring it up, the agencies laugh in their face. Like the IRS said, you can call us something else if you want. So there is no downward pressure on waste when you have through the tax system. There's no solution to that waste and inefficiency that problems with the tax system, because it is caused by the tax system itself. It is caused by the fundamental flaw of the tax system. And so when we look at, let's talk about the Trump tax reform for a minute, and the Ryan tax reform for that matter. Remember, the Republicans have been trotting out tax reform as, their golden boy. As soon as they realized they didn't care about Obamacare anymore and average Americans anymore, they started trotting
out shots fired.
As their golden boy, and they launched a little over a year ago the Better Way plan, which of course we called the Better Way to get reelected around here. And the Better Way plan basically laid out, here are what our principles of tax reform is. It's going to be revenue neutral, which means we're going to rearrange the deck chairs in the Titanic. Nothing's going to happen to revenue.
Right.
And we're going to somehow reform the IRS into this one big agency that I'm sure everybody would love to deal with, an office that handles your complaints, right? A one single IRS complaint office where they can shut you down in one place instead of having to shut you down in multiple places. And sorry, I'm from the north. My sarcasm showing. That's not good.
I feel like, well, listen, we're both from the north, so I'm right there with you. I feel like you might be being a tad sarcastic, maybe even a little cynical. I don't know.
Maybe.
You're too young for that.
So when we look at that plan, we didn't think the plan had a shot chance in hell, and especially with this border adjustable tax that was key to the tax plan because in order to have a tax reform, apparently we have to fund it, quote unquote.
Yeah.
As Steve Forbes put it, in order to cut taxes, we have to raise them.
Okay.
That was a great plan, and that was where they started in the House. Trump tax. Go ahead.
No, you're making my head hurt. Go ahead.
Sorry. So, Trump releases I hesitate to call it a tax plan. It is a one piece of paper that has bullet points on it.
Yes, I have that.
It's a set of talking points.
Yes.
And I predicted, and the Tax Revolution Institute's position, since studying the makeup of Congress and the history of tax reform, our position has been pretty much since October of last year. Our position had been there would be no tax reform this year. We had been saying it long before just about anyone else, any other tax group on the playing field. And I laid out more specifically my thoughts in the issue of Modern Trader that just came out at Freedom Fest. And the reason for that, there's a couple reasons for that. But number one is tax reform doesn't actually mean anything. Most Americans would think that tax reform means a complete overhaul of the tax system and tax code, radical simplification, make it easier to do your taxes, make a more fair, equitable tax system, you name it. But to members of Congress and to the corporations that actually fund their campaigns, tax reform means all kinds of different things. Tax reform means raising taxes, lowering taxes, making taxes simpler, making taxes more complicated, giving the IRS more power, giving the IRS less power. Reform is like taking a ball of Play-Doh and squeezing it. And it doesn't get rid of the main problem with taxes, which again, people do not get to choose how much money to put in the public service system, and people do not get to choose where their tax dollars go. So when we get to the Trump tax cuts, I want you to understand the reason why it started, they started out calling it tax reform, even the Trump people did, and they ended up calling it tax cuts, is they have already backed off tax reform. Tax reform is not happening this year. It's very likely, in the way most Americans would see it, happening next year.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So the tax cuts that Trump is talking about. Now let's spin the ball a little bit. If taxes take away freedom and prosperity, which they do, by virtue of being a tax, it takes away your freedom. By virtue of taking money out of your pocket, this is your prosperity. Then obviously reducing or cutting taxes is a but just cutting taxes does not work. Not only do we have 100+ years of data to tell us that all the tax cuts that we've had in history are temporary, but basically except for the first major tax increase in the Civil War that got repealed, and then, that technically came back too. So yes, basically every tax cut in history, at the state level, at the local level, at the federal level, all temporary.
Wow.
Reason why is we don't address the fundamental thing about taxation that we started this interview with, which is we, as a species, created taxes to do those things that we believe could not be done ourselves. Until we are able to show, and I think we just haven't recognized it,
right?
Until we're able to show that we already do a better job taking care of the poor, building our roads, educating our children, etc. Until we prove that we have institutions outside the government that already do a better job, we will not lower taxes. We will not increase freedom and prosperity. We will not permanently affect the tax system until we start replacing it. Buckminster Fuller talked about that if he's a famous architect, and he talked about if you want to fix a system, you do not attempt to change the existing system.
Yep.
You create a new system that makes the old system obsolete.
Absolutely, and I'm going to wrap up on that, and on that note. Now that you've significantly bummed my audience out, can you tell them? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Can you can you tell them how to get in touch with you and how to get in touch with the Tax Revolution Institute?
All right. Well, real quick, the answer on Trump's tax cuts is he can't do them.
Yep.
You can learn more at taxrevolution.us. Sorry to disappoint. Again, taxrevolution.us. And keep an eye out for the We Do Better project we're going to be launching here very shortly. Thanks so much for having me on, Melanie, and I look forward to being back on Money Talk.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much. That was terrific. You have a great day.
All right, you too.
All righty, bye-bye. We'll be back in one moment.
The best late night conservative talk show in America, Tackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Tackhead Sean and Tackhead Clint. And we're working on immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work there too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late night conservative talk, Tackheads Radio. Late night conservative talk show in America. In America. And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.
Okay, we are back. So now it's time for the 5 minutes of personal finance is now the 2 minutes of personal finance. I'm going to answer the question very quickly as to why in the world you spend more money than you have. Here's the quick and dirty on how this happens to you, why you have more month at the end of your money. Number one, if you don't have a budget, that is a problem. Probably the number one reason why people overspend is because of not budgeting their money. I know budgeting is a major bummer. Okay, I get it. But if you want to keep money at the end of the month, you have to develop a budget. Further, you need to plan. If you're not planning, you're probably overspending. In other words, you're beholden to buying things at the last minute, to if you're not planning out your meals, you're not planning out, what your financial plan is going to be for the day, you are probably going to overspend. A third reason, you don't make a shopping list. When you go shopping, you just go haphazardly and buy whatever it is that you want. That's basically how I do it because I'm independently wealthy, but not really. But if you do that, you'll end up overspending. This is a really big one. You fall for convenience, and I'm big with that one as well. I love convenience, and if it's more convenient, I will likely spend the money. And if you're not budgeting, and you fall for convenience, for example, buying the chopped lettuce in a bag that costs like 4 times as much as an actual head of lettuce. Perfect example. That was the first thing that I thought of when I read that. Another thing that will keep you spending more than you want. Another reason why you do this is because you live above your means. And that's probably the number one reason that happens to everybody is, we use too much credit, we live above our means, and it is a problem. Ooh, I have permission to, the boss man gave me permission to take the whole 5 minutes. Whoop, whoop. So hopefully we'll get through this list. I just didn't want to eat into anyone else's show. What's another reason why we spend more money than we have? We impulse shop and spend. We impulse shop and spend. Also shop out of boredom. Those two things will bite you in the financial booty every time. Okay? Think in terms of when you're sitting at the checkout in the supermarket, or even at your Marshalls and your Ross and all those places, they always have all these little displays while you're waiting in line. There's a reason for that, because they're counting on you impulse buying. Marshalls is the worst with the makeup on sale. And I'm like, oh, I don't have that color. I need that, but I don't. That's an impulse spend, and you end up overspending. Oh, HP Pundit, aka Dan Butcher, says that he doesn't buy anything unless it's on sale, which is great. Neither do I usually. But here's the thing. A lot of times that's not something that you need, and you end up overspending anyway. And the wholesale thing is a big old trick. But and I've talked about that in the 5 minutes of personal finance on another show. That being said, it is 11 o'clock and it's time for me to sign off. I want to thank everybody in the chat. I especially want to thank Dan Johnson for being a guest on the show from the Tax Revolution. He was fantastic. I want everyone to remember that this is important because it's your money.